Hello, and welcome to the Green Team of the Legendarium. Shout out to Craig and the crew for letting us follow in their shadow. Today, we'll be discussing Mexican Gothic by Silvia Moreno-Garcia. I'm your host, Befuddled Panda. With me today, I am joined by Kyptan.
Heyo.
And making his debut on the podcast, Dusty.
Hey there.
Welcome, welcome. The first part of this episode, I will say, is spoiler free, so keep that in mind. And we'll give a spoiler warning before diving into the spoilers. Let's start with a quick note on the author and the premise of the book. I didn't actually know that much about the author before I read this book, so I learned something new. Silvia Moreno-Garcia is a Mexican-Canadian author who has authored several critically acclaimed novels and edited several anthologies as well, such as Gods of Jade and Shadow, which won quite a few awards, including the Sunburst Award for Excellence in Canadian Literature of the Fantastic, and also the one that we're covering today, Mexican Gothic, which won the Locus Award, British Fantasy Award, Pacific Northwest Book Award, and Goodreads Award. So it's a very award-winning book. But what is Mexican Gothic about? Without giving too much away, here we go. We follow our main character, Noemi, I'm probably pronouncing that wrong, Taboada, very sorry, a young socialite who loves parties and is a master at the art of flirting. She is persuaded by her father to visit her cousin, Catalina, who married after a brief engagement to the disapproval of Noemi's father. Catalina has sent a letter to Noemi's father of a very disturbing nature, leading Noemi's father to become concerned and therefore decided to send Noemi to check up on Catalina. Noemi agrees under the condition that she be able to pursue a master's degree in anthropology. She travels to High Place, the home of the Doyles, which is Catalina's husband's family, and well, things just get weirder and weirder from there. All right. Let's start with overall spoiler-free impressions. Liked it? Disliked it? Was it what you expected? And also, as you can tell from all the awards this book has won, it was very hyped in the book community. Did it live up to the hype for you? Yes? No? Why or why not? All right, Kyptan, why don't you take it away?
Well, first off, I'd like to say that I saw the hype happening for this book, and then I was like, no, I closed out of half, like 50% of every conversation that I saw about this book online. I was like, nope, I'm only going to read every other one because I don't want another Memory Called Empire or etc. Or Jade City.
Oh my goodness, yeah.
So until I read it, I was like, no, I'm going to be out of these conversations.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think I effectively avoided overhyping it too much for myself.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah. And I ended up quite enjoying it. I thought it was a pretty solid 4-star book out of 5 or something.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe a little bit above that. The prose was solid. The story was solid. The characters were interesting. Our primary character, Noemi, I think she pushes certain buttons that I want to see the reaction to. And in fact, I went and I looked at the Goodreads 1-star reviews and I saw quite a few reactions I was expecting.
Oh, okay. I want to hear about those in the spoiler section.
I do too.
Sweet. Okay, so Kyptan likes it and successfully avoided overhyping it. That's awesome. What about you, Dusty?
Yeah, I think maybe like I liked it a little less than Kip did. It was good. And I'll talk about more in the spoiler section about the things that I really liked about it.
Okay.
But I don't know, there was kind of a slow burn for me and it took a while. And I think that I also avoided the overhyping because I actually didn't know that it got all of these like crazy awards. I'd read multiple people in like the server who were like, oh yeah, it was good, or like talking about it. But for the most part, I was like, okay, what is this book? What's happening? Where am I? So that was okay for me. I went into this book just like, oh, it's just another book I'm just picking up. So yeah. As for, we mentioned the main character, I really liked her. I think that was probably one of the better parts of the book for me. The thing that I didn't like is a lot of the side characters just kind of felt like just that, like side characters. There was like some development in some cases, but for the most part, it was just, I felt like she was it, and that was what you were following. So that was fine. But so yeah, That's how I felt about this.
Nice. Yeah, I try to temper my expectations going into this book, but I failed. So I felt like the book was overhyped. I was disappointed. To be fair, horror is not my genre. Like, I do not like reading horror. I don't usually reach for horror. Lovecraft Country is probably like the main exception of horror-esque things that I've read and I actually really liked. But there were still things in there that I didn't enjoy. And what I will say is I do like the writing. Like, it's so fast-paced and it's a page turner. I know, like, Dusty, you were saying it was a bit of a slow burn, but like compared to Malazan, which is what I was reading before, like this was just flying by.
Ah,
Yeah.
I felt the opposite. Huh.
Interesting. Okay, we'll talk about that. And I mean, was it what I expected? Yes and no. Like the creepy parts were what I was expecting. I was expecting it to be scarier, but it wasn't actually that scary for me. And I guess I just expected more from like what the title said, and we'll talk about that more in the spoiler parts because that part was a bit disappointing. But then like depending on the version of your book, at the back of my edition, the paperback edition, there was like author notes and stuff, and she kind of explained like why she named it Mexican Gothic. And yeah, I accept it. It's just it gave me some false expectations, but that's on me. So I would say like 3 stars for me. Okay, so we're still in the spoiler free section. What did you think of the writing style? What did you like or not like? Why? So going into a bit more detail. Dusty?
Oh, honestly, it really did flow well. It was good prose, and I found myself, so I kind of flipped back and forth between the audiobook and
Mm.
also reading the digital, and it lent itself really well to audio, the way that it was written and the way that the characters speak, and so it was easy to get through that. I really enjoyed that writing style, and I think that helped propel me through the book. Like there were
Mm.
certain parts where I was like, I do not care what's happening. I know this is probably important, but I'm not interested. But it felt nice. Like I was like
Hmm.
gently canoeing down a river reading this book. And I was like, okay, I'll keep going. I enjoy that part a lot. Yeah.
Nice. Kip?
It's gonna sound weird, but I felt like the conversations were written in some sections almost like action scenes.
Mm-hmm.
And I appreciated that our protagonist's internal ruminations about people's states of minds and like, are they telling me the truth in this instance? Like, what's going on under the surface? All that sort of stuff
Mm-hmm.
happened in what was clearly negligible real time. She
Mm-hmm.
didn't like pause and ponder and
Oh,
like
I
tilt
see.
her head and
Uh,
think. Sorry. Let's cut that. But we had this quick-witted protagonist who was adept in social situations, and I really
Mm-hmm.
appreciated that. And that those were her action sequences for the most part.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. Like her like us reading her thoughts were pretty seamless in the scenes.
Yeah,
I would say the other thing about the writing is the imagery was pretty strong,
the imagery was
which
strong.
yeah,
mhm.
which you really need for a horror book.
Yeah,
Um, and it's also a gothic novel, so you definitely get the tropes and the dark and the gloom. I mean, there's literal
the
and
feeling of place.
It
yes,
felt like
exactly.
Seattle.
A little bit. Not as
Not quite.
sinister.
I know exactly. The sinister doesn't match, but the gloom, I felt it.
You guys are
The
selling your
grayness.
city.
Yes. Um, don't come here. Please do not come to Seattle. Thank you. We have enough
I left
people.
it. So there you go. It shall help her with that push.
But yeah, like I felt the when she did flesh out the characters, like that was done pretty well. And then the pacing we talked about, where it was just like, especially in the dialogue, it was just like boom, boom, boom. Sometimes the dialogue is a bit simplistic, which is okay
Sure.
because like the real point isn't necessarily like we want to know how somebody said something. and like they were touching their face or whatever when they were saying it. It's like, no, just give us the information and then I want to know what happens in the mystery. Okay. So before we get into spoilers, just in general, who would you recommend this book to? Kip, you want to go first?
Ooh, people who enjoyed Annihilation.
Oh my god, I was thinking that.
Ah,
If you enjoy Jeff Vandermeer, I think you would enjoy this book. And we won't
Yeah.
say why.
I don't know. I mean, I guess that kind of makes sense, but obviously
But
part of this
younger.
will be spoilery. But maybe yeah, because there's a part to that Annihilation that's so like what's the ephemeral, like not really sure that this didn't have quite as much, and so I
Not
don't
as
know if it
much,
would
but I think
play
it
to
still
that.
had it.
Okay,
Mhm.
I could yeah,
I
I
think
could
it
see
still
it.
had it.
Mhm.
Yeah. That was the one I was thinking of.
Well, I see. I didn't even know. See, for me, I was just gonna. I don't know. Somebody who likes romance but is looking for something different, but
Do
it
you
doesn't
think
really
this
play as a romance at all.
Yeah,
So
actually, like do you
it's
think
horrifying.
We can't talk about if this book is a romance or not without getting into spoiler territory.
That is super true.
Well, I mean, it's Mexican Gothic romance. Like, would you do you say that fits the bill?
I think it's a romance.
Interesting.
Yes, but it's more like satirical romance, of like, oh, romance novels
Oh,
are
no, I don't think it's satirical. I think it's too
okay.
earnest
All right,
to be
all
satirical.
right, all right.
All
Fair.
right,
That
interesting.
makes
All
sense.
right. Then with that, this is the spoiler warning. If you have not read this book and you don't want to be spoiled, stop listening. If you haven't read this book and don't care, keep listening, and everybody else continue. So let's get into this.
Let's get into
There's
it.
just some random set of questions. There's no logical flow to this. You have been warned. So we get a lot of dream sequences in this book.
Yep.
And that's like, where we get a lot of like kind of backstory and context and mystery elements. I guess, like, did you enjoy those? How did you find those dream scenes?
I think they could have been 25% fewer.
I agree.
Yeah, I 100% agree on that 25% fewer or even less. I understand the purpose of them now, and so there did need to be them in there, but maybe I've read a lot of stuff lately that's been like a lot of literature uses dreams as like another field to like test out or like get the story to where it needs to be. And like sometimes I'm just like, do we really need it? And I'm tired of dreams.
Mhm.
So that whole dream section to me at the first part was like, is this really necessary? And then later we found out like, oh yes, it was necessary.
Mm.
Yeah.
I really liked the dichotomy that the dream sequences set up between
Mhm.
the daytime and nighttime of the book.
Mm.
Because all the daytime sequences, things might be questionably scary. Like things were going on during the daytime that were weird and questionable, but it wasn't until night that anything got truly dangerous.
Mm.
That's true.
And so the nighttime in that house was always the scariest time. And those dreams really lent themselves to making that happen as well.
Mhm.
Because the first scary things that happen in that house in the nighttime are just in dream sequences. They're not real, but then we later find out that no, they actually are semi-real in that she's being mentally raped by an eternal pedophile. But
Yeah.
but I do think that setting up that dichotomy was a strong narrative and thematic choice.
Yeah, I agree. Like, I get the point of them. I think at times I was just like, I started skimming.
Yeah,
Because
I definitely started skimming
Mhm.
a little bit in
Hmm.
those two
yeah, I was like,
because they
okay,
were repetitive.
mm-hmm,
They'd
yeah,
stopped offering new information about like 50 to 75% of the way through the book.
yeah,
Yeah.
and okay, I guess this is a bit of a segue. Did you guess how the book was going to end in terms of like the house,
100%.
right?
Oh, really?
Super early.
Yeah,
In terms
it's
of like
fine
the
if you
final state
didn't.
of the house, yes, I knew it was all going to be burned down. Ever
Yeah.
since
Uh,
Francis said she should have burned it down.
Mm, mm.
you were like, here's the foreshadowing. It's done.
There's the foreshadowing. It's done. This house is in flames by the end of the book.
That makes
Yeah.
sense.
And also, like, I mean, I've read some Gothic novels, Jane Eyre being one of them, and it really struck me as like there were some strong Jane Eyre vibes, but the like breadcrumbs that the author gave us, especially with the no cigarette smoking and Noemi often like playing with her lighter. I was like, oh goodness, just burn the freaking thing down now. I was waiting for that to happen.
Yeah.
I didn't get that. Wow, it's cool that you guys are like, oh, they're gonna burn it down. I didn't pick that up. See, what I thought was gonna happen, because this happens sometimes in books like this, is that you think, oh, maybe it would be paranormal or something not real, and then it's like, actually, everyone's been huffing paint fumes, or like the lead lining of the house has created a common illusion, and so that's what I was prepared for.
I did like the ambiguation built into the book around, is it paranormal or is it normal? I did
Yeah.
like, up until about the 50% mark, I was still convinced that it was going to be a normal thing. I had all these
Oh,
ideas
really?
about like, oh, is
Yeah.
it a mycotoxin? Is
Mm.
it lead? I was pretty convinced it was heavy metal poisoning for a while because of all the sweet wine references.
Yeah.
Yeah. And also her father, like they always talked about like how you make certain colors, and so I was like, they know all
Yeah.
these chemical ideas, so
Yep. I thought that was going to come into play. They
Yeah.
do lampshade that a little earlier on when she like wonders if it's arsenic poisoning in the wallpaper,
Right.
and then she's like, "No, it's the wrong color for that."
Yep.
I missed that.
But I was like, "Okay, well, she's dismissed arsenic, but has she fully considered lead?"
Right.
Mhm.
And then lead poisoning doesn't work nearly as fast as they're doing it in
Mhm.
this novel, so it never quite fit.
Okay, let's talk about that wine. What do you
That's disgusting.
what do you think it is?
I think it's saliva put into wine.
You think it's from Howard?
Yeah, I think it's from Howard. I think it's some sort of bodily excretion.
I think so
Ew.
too.
I didn't even make this
Ugh,
connection. I
I'm
feel like
just
I missed this
ugh.
book.
No, 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 no. I mean, like, it's totally fine if you missed it, but I was just, thinking through it, and we also mentioned it in a book club discussion I had in real life, and it just the emphasis put on that wine and some parallels to descriptions of Howard, especially when he was like
Yep. Yep.
all the boils and stuff. Ugh, gross.
It's described as sickly sweet, and so is the scent given off by Howard sometimes, and so is the taste of Howard sometimes.
Ugh.
Ugh. Yep.
I'm wow.
Our listeners creeped out yet?
Yeah, and kissing what's his
Oh my
name?
god.
Evil guy that I hate.
Virgil.
Virgil. Yeah. His mouth was described as tasting like a fruit as well.
Mm-hmm.
Uh,
That reminds me, I have some fruit that I need to eat. Anyway,
that's where you went? Oh my goodness.
I need to eat it before they rot.
That's true. Or maybe they'll turn into mushrooms, and
Oh
then those
So
god.
yeah,
mushrooms will
so
give you
yeah.
Okay,
longevity.
let's talk about the mushrooms.
I want to
Yeah.
stay on fruit for one moment longer
Oh, okay.
and talk about the taste, the sweet taste of the mouth of the men of this family, and
Uh-huh.
how it's really similar to how and other parallels, honestly, about this and Dracula.
I've actually not read Dracula, so
Neither have I.
tell us more.
Well,
Yes.
Dracula famously has mind control powers,
Mm-hmm.
and a lot of vampiric literature nowadays has them having some sort of lust or mind control venom in their teeth.
Mhm.
Okay.
So when they go to bite, you're paralyzed or
Oh yeah, yeah,
some
yeah.
otherwise incapacitated.
Mm-hmm.
And so I would say that another clear parallel to this story is Dracula and other vampiric horror fiction.
I agree. And in fact, my earliest like inklings, suspicions was, oh, is this family vampiric?
Yeah.
But
And I mean they kind of are.
yeah,
Kind of.
they
And
kind of
like
are.
the essentials, like
I mean, they've even got like a creepy crypt. Yeah, like all of
they
it's
got a creepy
there.
crypt, they're immortal, they've got an old tumbling manor.
Uh-huh.
They don't really need food to survive except fresh young people.
Fresh young people. Yes. And then they don't even leave very often. Like, it seemed like,
Yep.
when Francis would go into town, it was like, that's too dangerous. Like, why is there sunshine in town?
Energetic dead end.
Yep.
That is true. Yeah, a lot of parallels. I think I would have liked it more if they had turned out to be actual vampires.
I don't know.
But that's just me.
I liked the mushrooms
Me
All right,
too. It was
why
different.
do y'all like the mushrooms?
because it was
Try
different.
to convince me.
Because it was different.
Okay.
And also, I started originally as a yeast scientist studying fungi, so like.
Hey, he's a fun guy.
Badamboosh. Yes.
That makes sense. Yeah, I liked it because it was kind of different. I mean, in the sense of like having some kind of like mushroom or other element that like takes control of like you and your brain and changes you physiologically. Not necessarily like we've seen it a lot in different sci-fi or in like video games. It happens a lot. But I liked that how she used it in this one, and I didn't expect it. That was what made it so much fun. And like, oh, these mushrooms do that? Oh. So
yeah. I mean, I get it. It is different. It's just, to me, it wasn't that exciting. So that's just me.
you don't want to be a part of the gloom.
No.
You don't want to create your own mushroom empire.
No.
That was my
mean,
thought. I was like, why does he stay to the house? Why doesn't he like make this thing grow like down the mountain and take over Mexico?
I mean, it's probably just his own capacity to do so. Like, if he had the ability to, he totally would, but he's limited. And he was also damaged when Ruth shot him. Yeah.
Who?
I was always curious how Ruth was able to inflict such lasting damage on him.
Yeah.
Because he seemed to be able to recover from almost anything.
Yeah, they don't really explain it. It's just kind of there.
Yeah.
Well, she also killed a lot more than just Howard.
Yes.
So.
Apparently a gunshot is still pretty lethal.
Yeah.
Which is, at least there are some stakes there. He's not just immortal and invincible, and you can't only just kill him by fire.
Yeah. Well, okay. Speaking of gun, how did you feel about the appearance of the gun at the end of the book?
I thought it was a little weird, but not that weird.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Why do you?
Because the gun cabinet had already been placed on the table.
Why do you think Florence even had a gun?
Hunting.
But isn't it like a pistol?
What?
I don't think it was for hunting.
I thought it was a rifle.
No, I think it was a pistol.
No, I think it's a pistol.
There was a lot of like, the way that they were using it in that final like scene of like, I tripped and it fell, and like the way that they explained it, it definitely seemed like a pistol.
I had it in my head as a rifle the entire time.
Okay. See, that makes sense for hunting. So I wasn't thinking about hunting. I was thinking more in line of like, not that they needed it, but they had miners and other people before. So like maybe if they were thinking about restarting, they needed to have some form of coercion or some form to protect the family that wasn't just the mushrooms.
Interesting. I don't know. Maybe I'm like too cynical. And the more I think about it, maybe it doesn't fit like Florence's character traits, but I was thinking maybe it could be like her way out when she can't handle it enough, but
I don't think that was ever in her mind.
Nah, that didn't seem like Florence. Yeah.
Didn't seem like Florence.
Yeah. Okay. Why did the author choose this time period, do you think? I think she actually gives explanation at the end of the book, but what do you think?
To show how far we haven't come.
Yeah.
True?
Yeah.
I mean, that is true. Yeah, a lot of things are still relatively the same. Do you want to give any examples?
We have a relatively modern woman in that she's extremely recognizable in the form of Noemi. She wants to determine for herself how her future is going to go, and she doesn't want to be married off and start producing children as her sole avenue in life. And she's immediately recognizable. And part of that's because she's in this privileged household. She is a taboada. She is rich. She is wealthy. She has social status. She has the luxury of being able to determine for herself what she wants her life path to be. But you look at her and you think this could be in 2020.
What about the parts where like her being in the house and the things that happen in the house where with Virgil and kind of like her experiencing her own sexuality, especially when it was like that scene in the bathtub the first time
Oh,
where
yeah.
like Virgil comes in and she like enjoys it but
The
is
dream
also
sequence,
afraid.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
How did you... Yeah, go ahead.
go ahead, Kip.
I actually called it earlier.
Yeah?
Yeah, back when I was like, when did I say Hugo makes an adorable sub in the group chat? I was like maybe 10% in.
Yeah.
But I called that Noemi was going to be this woman who wanted some form of not really domination, but when you're used to such passivity and second place status, any form of equality verges into what looks like domination from the other side. And her recognizing that she has needs that she wants fulfilled and that she has desires and that they might be labeled as dark, that she's just forthright about it to herself. And honestly, everyone else knows that she wants to determine her own destiny.
Mhm.
And it gets her called a lot of names.
Yeah.
Which is it still happens all the time.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. And that's one of the things that I went looking for in the 1-star reviews, and I will say that some of those names are there.
Oh, wow.
No, people.
Okay.
I'm not surprised though. I see what you're going for with those 1-star reviews now.
Yeah. That's unfortunate.
Yep, manipulative B word.
Yeah, but it's unfortunate, but that's exactly what like Kyptan's saying. Like a lot hasn't changed, right? We still have all these people. Of course, now there are. I'd say that there are less, but there really aren't. It's because it's built into the structure of the society, and that's kind of what people believe. And so it's okay for them to go leave these 1-star reviews instead of think about like actual people and like how they feel and consider like ideas of equality and where this is coming from. I don't know.
Like evaluate their own perspectives.
Exactly. So
yeah, no. This is horror stories are always moralistic, and the morals of this one is counter to a lot of horror story morals. A bit, because in a lot of horror stories, only the virgins get to survive, right?
That's so true.
And luckily, this is not one of them. Catalina was raped and survives. Noemi raped and survives, and wants sex, but survives.
But on her terms.
On her terms, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, there is like an element to that too, where at the end, I don't know how far going into this, but they're like taking their power back, and like we see that.
Oh,
with
I mean, a little gratuitously.
survivors,
or
yeah,
not gratuitously, but a little simplistically.
It is, yeah, but it's still that element definitely plays, and like we obviously see it, and then okay, you got it.
Yeah, like we get to see them take violent, bloody revenge on some rapists, and that's great.
Yes,
but it was a little simple at the end. After all this build up and meandering.
Yeah.
Sometimes I like that though. Just like, okay, well, we're just gonna absolutely like shut down the other side. And we're like, you get that like release of like, yes, they win. That happens to me a lot.
Yeah, no, I was very happy for Catalina in the moment when she was able to repeatedly stab Virgil. I was like, he deserves it. He deserves it
so much. I was like, thank you. Oh, the catharsis is real.
I was yelling at Noemi when she didn't slit his throat earlier.
Yeah, it was really frustrating. There were some moments where I was like, come on, like this could have been done already.
Like, I get preserving her innocence, but come on.
Well, I do find it satisfying that it was Catalina rather than Noemi who killed Howard and Virgil. Because honestly, I think for Catalina, she was the one who was wrong the most.
Yes.
Between the two of them, and so that was really satisfying for her because for the most part, like she was pretty incapacitated. Up until the end. I mean, like there were some moments where she had a little bit of agency, but it wasn't really until the end.
Yeah.
Okay, what about the ending with Noemi and Francis? Was that satisfying? Dusty's like,
I don't know.
I think Francis should have died.
Yeah, I think that probably it would have been better if he died. It's kind of nice in a way because he was like a prisoner, but it's always that like moral dilemma. Like, was he a prisoner? How much could he have done? And then like, what's the purpose of like, are him and Noemi going to be like a thing for like ever? Because is he still an immortal being because of the mushrooms? So I was just kind of like, it's fine. It's nice that he got that freedom, I guess, but it felt like it wasn't really necessary.
I
He could have
agree.
died, and everybody would have been like, "Oh, and there goes the family," and then everybody else goes back to Mexico City and goes to some parties.
I was waiting for him to die.
Yeah, I kind of thought that he maybe. I'm glad
I
he
was
didn't
also
though
waiting
too.
for him to do a heroic sacrifice.
But
Yeah.
it's kind of nice that he did it because like it just shows even more so that like he wasn't the savior, right? It's not like, oh, the man doesn't become the savior.
Yep, nope, he
It's
doesn't.
Catalina and Noemi that are the ones that they use their own agency to get themselves out.
Yeah, Noemi even like had to drag him out.
Yeah, but I think that like after that, my ideal ending would have been Catalina and Noemi do everything that they did. They all three of them arrive at the town, and then there Francis decides to kill himself.
Oh. I thought I was waiting more for like him dying because of his separation from the house, and that like it was just too much for him because he
Yeah,
was
that was
so
my thought too, because they
integrated.
talk so much about this, like you can't leave the house, you can't leave
Right.
the house. And then I guess maybe like, oh, they burn it down so like you can leave
Well,
the
he
house.
also
But
drank the tincture from Marta.
oh, he did.
Yeah, along with
Okay.
Noemi and Catalina. So there
I
was
think
explanation for it.
the primary reason that you couldn't leave the house was Howard, though. It was the person in control of the house.
Oh,
And so as
okay.
soon as Howard died, there was no like the mushroom didn't care. The mushroom did not care at all like if the family
Well,
members left.
and Agnes,
Agnes.
because Agnes was the
Agnes
brain.
wasn't in control though. She
But
was enslaved to do like the autonomic functions of the house, but Howard was controlling her.
but technically though, like the way that they explained it, Howard needs like a new body, but his like essence would have lived on in the gloom had Agnes not been destroyed. So
Yes.
then he would still have control of a sort. So it would have been harder to leave.
Yeah, I think it was both Howard and Agnes had to go.
Yep.
It's like they were the keys.
Yeah,
Yep.
poor
Man,
Agnes.
that was horrifying with Agnes. So I'm still confused on that. Did she actually like they convinced her to choose to be the sacrifice? Is that what happened?
Honestly, I don't know.
Is
Who are you talking about exactly?
the family, because like they made it seem like she was like,
No, they
"Oh,
didn't
I signed
convince
up for
her.
this," and then she was like, "No, I don't want this." Actually, that's what they made it seem like.
No, I think they drugged her and then they put her in
Yeah.
a coffin.
Oh
They
After
God.
she
drugged
gave
her.
birth.
They put her in a coffin.
Uh,
She was a child.
Yeah, poor
She
woman.
was a child bride.
so messed up.
It's a very, very messed up book and very, very
Yeah,
messed up family.
Howard is a complete monster.
I did like the offhanded jokes about phrenology that were in there about the
Oh my
calipers.
god.
Did you guys catch those?
Yeah.
No.
It's old-fashioned pseudoscience that it was supposed to, in extremely large air quotes, determine the supremacy of a person's intellect based on the shape of their skull.
Oh, that one.
Mhm.
Yes. Okay, that's what you meant by the calipers. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah. That pseudoscience was called phrenology, and it was a
Mm,
major component of eugenics, so specifically
Yep.
racial eugenics,
yep.
for a long time.
Yeah, there's a lot of like white man's burden type stuff in here, and because like they're English, they're
Oh
coming
yeah.
over, and he's believing that he's
Oh
bringing
my God. Yep.
prosperity, and that oof.
Which also tie into Dracula is another like country transplant coming from where's Dracula from originally?
Transylvania?
Pennsylvania.
Yeah. Sorry, I have Count Strahd von Zarovich in my head, and I just keep thinking Barovia. But it's another instance of like a transplant from one country into another, and in Dracula, it's this English lawyer who goes to Transylvania, and that's the culture change. And then in reverse, Dracula goes to England.
Oh,
Oh.
okay. I do need to read Dracula. We even
I
have
think
an
I do
episode on
too.
Dracula that we did last year.
So yeah, there's these solid cross-cultural notes in Dracula, much like there are in Mexico and England in Mexican Gothic.
Yes.
What messages or themes do you think the author wanted to convey through the story? I think we touched on a little bit.
We've touched on a bunch of them for sure.
Yeah, I think so too.
Colonialism?
Sexual abuse.
Colonialism. Yep. Yeah, and general role of like women in society.
Mansplaining.
Man, there was a lot of that.
Yeah, there was a lot of colonialism, and I think there are more that we could read into it,
Yep.
but I think that'll take a long
Virginity,
time.
mental
Yeah.
health.
Well, part of what inspired her to write this story was when she, and this is very vaguely in my memory, so apologies if I get this wrong. She was like visiting a town in Mexico, and it's
classism for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, classism. And she was just like seeing the aftermath of, like colonialism in Mexico
Yep.
and how she
Extraction,
named.
exploitation.
Exactly. And so part of this is like it's called Mexican Gothic, but it focuses so much on the non-Mexican people, like their influence as well. And that was intentional.
So much of Mexico's history is about a series of invaders.
Yep.
Not just Mexico.
Not just Mexico. Nope.
For sure. I mean, like that's why.
I mean,
like,
a lot of countries.
Yes, you could pretty much transplant this and move it to anywhere in like the Latin American region, anywhere in like even Asian countries. I mean, there wasn't the complete. Of course, it was horrifying in other parts of the world, but the Americas especially were devastated when the Europeans showed up, and how they asserted their dominance was compared to other regions of the world just absolutely unheard of. So
yeah, it could be. This story could represent so many different countries and histories.
But also, it was interesting too, because you think about, so they're bringing these mushrooms, and so the mushrooms are kind of like a disease, and like that was like another theme, like the carriers of like the Europeans showed up with diseases, and then there goes most of the indigenous population.
Yeah, a lot of those miners died, huh?
Yeah.
And like they're not technically mass graves, but there's no markers.
Right.
I
that was a fine point.
I just hate that whole like we're gonna explain around these things that look bad, or like we're gonna justify our actions in like this way and that way. And anytime I read it, I have a visceral anger of like, how could you? And I'm like, oh yeah, just read a history book, Dusty.
Yeah.
Okay. Other thoughts? Any last comments? Anything we haven't touched on you want to make sure we cover?
Nope.
I wonder how Hugo's doing.
I actually want to know how our dad is too. Like when they go back and like, are they going to tell him what actually happened, or are they just going to say, "Oh no, it was bad. They're a really bad family. They just wanted our money." And just leave it.
Yeah, she kind of took the easy way out towards the end, where it was just like, "Oh, we don't have our story straight, but yeah, the doctor he knew we were lying, but he accepted it." And it's just like, okay, yeah, like how would you explain?
You can't, like, that's why you get to the ends of ones like this where it's not a rational explanation, and then it's you can tell people, but no one will believe you. Okay.
I mean, at least everyone in that town, except maybe like the doctor a little bit, knew that something really weird was going on up at the high place.
Right. Yep.
Really weird.
Yeah.
Do you think that they'll open up the mind for themselves, or do you think they're like, nope, hands off that?
I think they're going to open up the mind for themselves, because that seemed to be where this was going.
Yeah.
It didn't seem to be dismissive of the idea of the material wealth left in the mines.
And as they should. I mean, it's their land, like.
I mean the.
It means the tabuadas.
Reopening a mine is not always the least environmentally impactful thing you can do on land, but sure.
Yeah,
that is true.
Especially if there's not much left.
Yep. So, I mean, there's a bunch of silver in the fire they could still sell.
Yeah.
Alrighty.
Yeah.
Any other thoughts?
I did truly hate Virgil. I
Oh,
did
Yep.
truly hate Virgil, and I think that was a good character.
Mm-hmm. I did like the villains. Yeah.
Yep.
I think that they were done well.
Mm-hmm.
I liked that they were all plotting because there was this part of me that's like, Virgil doesn't seem like the type to just roll over and let Howard take his body. And so like then you find out, oh wait, Virgil was like, oh, you will help me destroy Howard and I will become the patriarch. And I was like, okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yep.
Agreed. They're turning this into a TV show,
Yeah.
apparently.
Okay.
Yeah. And
I can see it being pretty.
I can see this being a
Definitely.
show. Yeah. I mean, the imagery was pretty well done, and I think that lends itself well.
Mhm.
And the action. We didn't ask for any questions at all for this episode. I totally forgot.
It's okay. No one else seemed to have read it.
I thought other people read it.
Not on our Discord.
Okay.
It's
Maybe they're just talking about it.
I didn't see anybody. Anyways, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm very wrong.
Okay.
I don't know. We have like 1,000 people on Discord now. So
We do have 1,000 people now. So thank you everybody for joining.
That's pretty dope.
So with that, that concludes this episode. Find us on Discord. Join us there for more conversations. You can find the link at thelegendarium.com. Also follow us on Twitter at Green Team Pod for updates and fun times. Check out the Legendarium podcast for Wheel of Time, Cosmere, Lord of the Rings content, and so much more. Thank you to our panelists, Kyptan and Dusty. I'm Befuddled Panda. Until next time. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
There we
Oh,
go.
hey.
I think Craig's just really lazy.
Namesake.
He like doesn't show up the first time you call, but
That's true. It's true.
yeah, usually he'll show up the second time.
Yep.